Welcome to another Coaching Wisdom podcast with Courtnay Malcolm. She is a mindset coach. So we're going to talk about her story and mindset and how to gain compassion, confidence, purpose, and everything in between. This podcast was brought to you by potfire.com. If you want to start scale, be invited to podcasts or even find sponsors. Podcasts are quite an amazing growth tool. They're also used to learn, to grow community, and everything in between. So if you need help with your pod, hit me up. The website is potfire.com. Courtnay, welcome to the pod. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself and about your mindset coaching business?
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. I'm Courtnay. I have been mindset coaching for, it feels like my whole life. As a business, it's been about 4 years in the making. And what I do is I'm really active with proactive mental health. So what I saw in my own experience is a lot of burnout, and I really didn't have the tools and didn't have the access to do something proactively about it. So here in Canada, a lot of the time we are working ourselves into burnout and have a lot of work to do to recover from that. It takes a lot out of your system, and it can make you really, really ill because your immune system is down and ready and ripe for the taking. So it's something that I really push when I am talking to clients, when I am doing workshops, when I am in keynote speeches, to start taking care of yourself proactively before it happens. So the confusion I like to clear up a lot is we put a lot of emphasis on physical health, on exercise, and on nutrition. And we don't really emphasize taking care of yourself when it comes to your mental health early. And we don't really have the skills to do that because it hasn't really been a big part of our education. It hasn't been something we've learned. It's something that's kind of trial by fire. So, what I like to do is educate everyone on things that they can do ahead of time to help mitigate that, help to find balance, help to, let go of things that are barriers or things that are holding you back from being able to show up the way that you want to and live a lifestyle that feels balanced and feels healthy for you to continue to move forward.
And what's your story? How did you get there? Why is this a priority for you?
My story is really convoluted. I went to university. I was an athlete. I was a rugby player. Won 2 national championships. So my life was very focused around athletics and academics. So that is where I really focused all of my energy. So once I became a teacher and was working for a few years, I had really started to notice, wow, this is really difficult to manage. And there was a lot of things within the system of where I was working that really made me have to take all of my time and energy and put it into that job. So I was working a lot. I would say I was probably working 80-hour weeks as a teacher, even though I was being paid for the 40 hours. So there's a lot of preparation you're almost doing like a full day conference every day. You're on stage every day in front of a group of people, and it's energetically taxing. And you're also very involved. These are students that you're working with every day. So there's a lot of emotion behind it because you're helping people learn past where they think they can be. And it required a lot of mental energy, and I had none left for myself at the end of the day. With the constraints of that, it got to a point where I kept ignoring it because it was kind of the social norm. Everyone around me was doing it. Teachers who were senior teachers, veterans who had been there for years, had just kind of like allowed themselves to accept that this is what the job looks like. This is what life looks like as a teacher in this career. And it didn't jive. I looked forward and thought, oh my God, I don't think I can do this for another 5 years, let alone for the rest of my career. So I started looking into other options. And it wasn't until I did all the things that I thought I could do to kind of mitigate that stress and come back refreshed on every, school break, during the summers, on the weekends, and that still wasn't enough. So I knew that as a teacher, with the amount of time I had to rest, recuperate, recover, and come back feeling fresh, it still wasn't enough time. So that's when I decided I had to make a change. It actually it put me in a place because I had tried to work harder and was just expecting it to be able to change. But when I realized it wasn't jiving with me, I had to leave that profession, take care of myself. And I actually was on like a medical stress leave to start taking care of myself in a way that I could maintain and then come back into the workplace. Once I took that time off and really kind of rediscovered myself and who I was and what I had lost with my eyes set so hard on that endeavor, that it was really not what I really wanted to do. And it allowed me to get some clarity to move forward. And I started working, I've worked volunteered most of my life with adults with disabilities, youth with disabilities, whether it's cognitive, mental, physical. And I really, really enjoyed the one-on-one experience. And I realized that I really had a great niche for being able to help people feel better about themselves. And that's when I discovered coaching. And I was still kind of looking into getting into the school system as a guidance counselor, but there's still so much red tape around helping people. And it's usually very downstream where you help people once they're at a point of no return. And I really wanted to be more proactive and say, why do we have to wait until people get here? So that's when I went and got certified in coaching from a really awesome coaching certification in Toronto, Canada. And it's all based on neuroscience. So it was led by a PhD neuroscientist, which I really love. I'm a science background. So I really, really was drawn to that. I'm not someone who's all for the fluff. I like the science behind the fluff. So what I learned there is so much more interesting, and it's more based on positive psychology. A lot of the psychology and supports that we have out there that are therapeutic are based on negative psychology, which is kind of what happened in your past. Where did you get that from? Let's find out what's not working and try to fix it. Where coaching was much more, let's take what you have and let's be resourceful. Like, what ingredients do you have? How can we make that future happen for you and kind of pull you out of some of the blinders that are on because of your current experiences? And I just found that so powerful. And in my own mental health journey, it really changed the game to be able to flip my mindset and feel like I have more control over all of my health. So that was what was so powerful about it. And that's where my coaching journey began. And now I'm doing that almost full time with a lot of other speaking opportunities and conferences, and trying to just really spread the message as much as I can that you deserve to care for yourself and you deserve to fill your cup so that you can show up with energy and feel refreshed and excited about your next day, instead of doing that kind of rollover where you carry your stress into the next day or the next week or the next month by not kind of facing it head on. So what I focus on the most is building resilience for that. And what that does is helps you with building compassion for yourself and giving yourself grace for, when things don't go the way that you planned, and learning how to be a little bit more flexible with yourself and being a beginner with some of the goals that you might set that are not something you've done before, but doing it with a little bit more compassion and courage, kind of stepping into that beginner mindset of, this is new. I'm not going to be great at it at first, but the more you repeat it and the more you try it, it's going to change your brain chemistry, and it's going to change your ways of thinking and those pathways, and help you kind of move forward in a different way than you thought was possible.
Yeah, I think there's some value in the why and uncovering things of the past and like why the things are the way they are. I think some people would need to be equipped with some tools in diving deep in that past, compassion and so forth. Maybe that sometimes is lacking. For example, for me, it's easy to uncover my past and even the shit that got really wrong or stuff that was not aligned with my today's values. For example, stuff that usually pain people, and talking about me, it's like, yeah, I'm past that. But I think there's value in that from a neural pathway perspective, because us humans brains, when we're young, it's always why daddy, why mommy. It's just like these neurons, they want to explore, they want to go as further as possible and possibly even connect with others. Then what you're referring to, I guess, with grace and focusing on solutions and what you can do. Well, I call that stoicism, and I guess that relates to what you're saying here. I'm just, yeah, like most people when they faced a new challenge, I heard you talk about grace. I'd like the definition of that. I call it flowing, I guess, through these problems and not being in your own way, because I believe challenges are somewhat easy to solve. It's mostly like our own challenge that we put in front of us. Oh, that's going to be super hard. I'm never going to get through this. And that just adds more cortisol. And next thing you know, you're kind of stuck in a cortisol loop. So what's your method? And is it like similar to stoicism of fixing shit as quick as possible in the present?
Stoicism, I feel like definition wise, I don't know if that's as much as my vibe as it is building resilience and loving yourself anyway. Like loving yourself even when you get it wrong, and knowing that like getting it wrong doesn't change the value that you bring. And with the neuroscience behind how we change our habits, how we live differently, how we manage our thoughts and navigate our mind, it's a lot about getting past the blocks, because it's almost like there's doors that in our mind that are unopened. And not only are they unopened, but we're not even aware they're there. And I think that's what's so beautiful about coaching is I can help you, and if depending on the type of coaching, help you open those doors and just open to different perspectives that you didn't allow yourself to do. And sometimes it's really hard to do that in your own mind, because you're not being pulled out of your own perception of your experience. And like you said, it is valuable to look back. That's how we inform our future with our past. And it's not that it's not important to look at with coaching. It is just not really the realm that we spend a lot of time in, but it is still important. And when I'm working with clients one-on-one, when something comes up that they've reached a block or a barrier, or they're feeling a lot of resistance with what they're trying to do, whether it's internal or whether it's external, I help them kind of break down, let's just go down all these roads. Let's just see where you would end up down all these roads. And what I really like to incorporate the most is the mind-body connection. When it comes to stress, which is where I love talking about stress, because it's such a system that we can leverage, but we just don't know how to leverage it. It's a skill just like anything else that you can learn. The thing that makes it more difficult is there's no one formula, because everyone's different. So it's very much a one-on-one kind of problem solving. We're collaborating to figure it out. But it also teaches you the power of being able to reflect and being able to be self-aware of, what's going on. What are your red flags for when things aren't going well? When do you step back when you should be stepping forward? What is it that is driving that? Is it fear? Is it a past experience that you had that didn't work well, and now you're kind of protecting yourself? Because our stress system is, I like to say, it's kind of like we have all of these new things in our new society. I mean, the amount of growth and change that exists in what our lives look like as a human in 2023 is so different than it was 10, 15, 30 years ago. Completely different. And the way that it is affecting us is we are having so many things taking our attention. It's really hard to focus or even hear the quieter voices in our head, or just our interaction with other people. We kind of get into a groupthink, and we forget that we can think outside of that, and we can problem solve outside of that. And learning that skill is not only for right now with this particular problem or barrier, it is a skill that you can use again in the future with every new problem that comes. So for me, it's more, I'm teaching you how to move through that yourself. So I want to give you the skills to do that instead of having to constantly reach out and look for solutions elsewhere. And what I love about it is it helps you feel like you have more control and more agency in the direction of your life. And the power that brings is confidence. It makes you feel confident in being able to do things that are new, do things that are different, and put forward more energy in that direction, because we have kind of a negative bias with our brain. And the reason is we have an old operating system. So our stress system is, hasn't really evolved as quickly as the rest of our kind of lives have evolved. We have all of these different things that we can use to, one up our health or one up our nutrition, or all of these different things that are kind of tools and recipes to improve those things. But when it comes to stress, we're usually always talking about how to not have stress. And that's not realistic. We're going to have stress. Our stress system is there for a reason, but it has evolved to responding to things that are perceived threats. They're not real threats. So it's there for a reason. And what's really cool about the mind-body connection is our mind is the interpreter, but our body is the reaction. So our body picks up all those signals. So in the same way, if we like go back in time a few thousand years, it would be very good for our protection to feel or sense something. It's almost intuitive that something is off, or there's might be danger around, or we hear a sound and it's associated with something that could be, a threat to us, literally in terms of life or death. Now we get that same feeling when we get a text message, or when we get a phone call, or when we're going into work, or when we didn't finish an assignment, or if we, a project's not done, or if, something's going on in relationships or family. So we have so much stress input, and we don't know how to manage that within our body. So a lot of times we kind of get that energy stuck, and it lives in our body just as much as it lives in our mind. And knowing that, you can start to see what your stress red flags are in your body when you start paying attention to some of, I call it like you're decoding your body signals. So if you're tight in certain areas, if you notice yourself kind of collapse in on yourself, or if you just kind of sense something that is, your body is trying to tell you that something's not feeling right, or something's not feeling safe or comfortable, and it's up to you to interpret that. The interesting thing is, like I said, it's an old system. So we interpret what we experience or what we feel in our body, in our mind. And often our first thing is the association. When did I last feel like this? This is all subconscious for the most part. It takes time and effort to start really decoding what that means. But we only have one system to feel it, which is our body. And we have to interpret that carefully, because a lot of times we can avoid things because of the stress that we feel in our body, or some of those signals that come up. My example is anxiety and excitement. Two completely different feelings, different emotions involved. However, the way it feels in your body, the sensations you get are very similar, almost exactly the same. And a lot of times we can confuse those feelings because we haven't really spent time trying to interpret them as being different. We just interpret, oh, that's a signal, I don't want to be here, or this is too stressful, or I'm overwhelmed, or whatever it might be. And we go into like our fight or flight mode. And often what I've learned, especially with my own anxiety, is a lot of times I'm excited, but I get the feeling of anxiety. And I've had to learn the difference between, okay, I might be anxious, I might be feeling anxious, but I don't need to run away. I'm safe. You have to remind yourself, is that something I really need to be worried about? Is that anxiety or is that excitement? They can feel the same. So the more familiar you get with your body signals, it can help you interpret it in your brain, where you understand that, okay, this is stress because, oh, my body has felt this before, but I don't need to run because I'm safe. So you almost have to interpret it in a way that is going to help you move past some of the things that have been keeping you sitting in fear, instead of trying to understand why you're feeling like that. So that's a lot of what I do as a mindset and mental health coach, is help you figure out what that is in your body, becoming familiar and self-aware of what that looks like, feels like, so that when it comes up, you're now thinking, is that what I'm feeling? Or am I feeling a little bit different? So it helps you move through that resilience I was talking about. It helps you move through things a little bit different. And it also gives you the power to self-regulate. So one thing that we're kind of starting to lean on a little bit too much is medication for mental health, which is absolutely 100% great. It's absolutely 100% necessary for certain times, for certain people. I have experience with medication as well. I think that it shouldn't be the first choice, and it makes it really easy and detrimental to take a pill to feel like it's the solution when there's a lot of work. So what I learned is, even though medication is helpful, the way that I had a conversation about this with a psychologist and a psychiatrist, and what their thoughts were on it, because a lot of these medications are now being questioned now that they're seeing more long-term effects. Should we be giving them to children? Should we be giving them to people under this age? Because it really does change your brain chemistry, and your body can adapt to having certain chemicals in your brain, or having that kind of crutch that it's not doing it on its own anymore. Your body's very efficient. And it's like, oh, this is already doing fine. I don't need to make any more dopamine or serotonin. I don't have to worry about that balance. So your body just is like, oh, it's already here. I don't need to make any more. So you kind of start building a deficit over time, and it makes it really, really hard to get off the medication. And you can kind of feel dependent on it. So basically what a psychologist describes it as is medication helps turn the light on so that you can do the work, but the work is not done. That's just step one. So that's one thing that I really like to, especially when I'm working with youth, is I want to help you build those self-regulation skills. And the earlier you can learn them, the more easy it is to navigate through the big challenges that come your way, instead of it being something that completely derails you. And if medication, for instance, is the only tool you have in your toolbox, you're going to feel like you're kind of going through the same motions again, because once it levels out, just like we have a tolerance for everything, whether it's caffeine, over time you need more, right? And people will, reach their ceiling and max out on their medications and not be able to do anything different. So it's one tool in the toolbox that's really helpful, but it's the other work that I noticed after that's what really made the change, is my mindset, is how I approach things, how I see it, and how I view myself in that experience. And being able to kind of let go of some of the things that are holding me back, or you back, or whoever is working together. It's really important to be able to make space for creating those skills that you can always lean on and come back to and continue to use. And just like flexing a muscle, the more you do it, that's the way our nervous system works, is the more you do it, the more your brain recognizes it and associates and makes those new pathways. So if you associate and make those new pathways, your thinking actually changes, because it's not just going down the beaten path that you usually do, which with our stress system, it usually is a negative bias, because it's usually, let's be safe, let's escape a threat, let's avoid anything that's going to be uncomfortable or put us into, a negative feeling. We really have to work through a forest almost and make a new pathway in our brain to rewire how we experience some of those negative things. And it can help you move through challenges with a completely different mindset. And also, it's going to help you do it with confidence, with ease, and also give yourself compassion for, the days that are just not good days, and allowing yourself the time and space to rest and come back and hit it tomorrow.
Right. Where can people find out more about you, Courtnay?
You can find out more about me on my website. It's courtnaymalcolm.com. And my name's spelled with an A, so it's Courtnay. And you can also find me on Instagram at Courtnay Malcolm, and on TikTok at Courtnay Malcolm. And yeah, I also have a podcast with my friend who's in the UK, and we are talking all about behind the scenes of trying to be your best self, trying to reach goals. But what we really wanted to do is give a glimpse into what's happening behind the scenes. I think there's a lot of forward highlights that are in social media that show all of the great parts of that journey, but don't really show all of the parts that actually knock you down on the way. That really is when you jump off that journey because it becomes too hard, or you meet some resistance and you're not sure how to deal with it. We talk about that behind the scenes to help others understand how to process that, how to move through it, how to have some acceptance of where you're at and what you need to move forward.
Love it. That was another CEOwisdompodcast.com with Courtnay Malcolm and Charles Comiazic.